This video is sponsored by Established Titles. With Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi now out on Disney+, and Andor just around the corner, Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy is talking Star Wars again. While doing so, she had to admit to Vanity Fair that the Rian Johnson trilogy has been backburnered, which is code for dead in the water. We just can't bring ourselves to admit it. Something else Kennedy could not admit was why it has been backburnered. Instead, an acceptable truth was provided, and one which requires a lot of mental gymnastics to accept at that. That would be because to this day, the public rejection of The Last Jedi and the downfall of the Rian Johnson trilogy were very bitter pills to swallow in Lucasfilm. But why? Is that not just business as usual? We shall see, for in this editorial, I will begin by first breaking down the official excuse for why the Rian Johnson trilogy isn't happening. Why that trilogy was so special to Kathleen Kennedy, and the high regard her loyalists in Lucasfilm still hold The Last Jedi in. Despite the fans clearly holding OG characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Lord Vader in much higher regard. And yes, I refer to him as Lord Vader deliberately, because just like I can be referred to as Andre, I can also be referred to as Lord Einherjar. And courtesy of Established Titles, this video's sponsor, I have the certificate to prove it. Established Titles is a project based around the historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. Through Established Titles, you can be the owner of at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Ardley, Aberdeenshire, Scotland, which by Scottish tradition makes you a lord or a lady, and you'll get an official certificate with a crest to prove it. This certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. But there's more to it. To support worldwide reforestation efforts, Established Titles work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, so for every order, a tree will be planted. This is a fun novelty, and in places where prefixes are allowed in official documents, you might even be able to replace Mr. or Miss with Lord and Lady. This also makes for a great gift. For instance, June 19th is Father's Day in most places. Have you thought about what you'll be getting your old man? You still have time to make him a lord. How's that for a gift? Established Titles is running a big sale right now, and if you use our code MIDNIGHT10, you get an additional 10% off. Go to https://established-titles.com/midnight10 to get your gifts now. Link is in the description. With that, let's get back to Vanity Fair. We recently broke down the May 17th Vanity Fair feature article, Star Wars: The Rebellion Will Be Televised. Here, Kathleen Kennedy's truth about how Star Wars has fared during her Lucasfilm tenure was presented, without fact checks or critical questions from Vanity Fair, because you don't have to deal with that in paid-for puff pieces. But Lucasfilm didn't pay for just that one article. No, they paid for several, and that cover story was comprised of the highlights from 3 other articles. One of these source articles is titled Star Wars Forever: How Kathleen Kennedy is Expanding the Galaxy, and it is here that she spoke about Rian Johnson at greater length. There have been many other articles from other outlets derived from what was said here, but this is the source behind them all. In what was framed as a Q&A session, during which Vanity Fair got to ask vetted and approved questions, they asked, one of the enduring questions that the fans have is about Rian Johnson and his future with Star Wars. Yeah, in their dreams. Is there anything you can tell me about that? I know it's been said that that trilogy is still on, but it's been so many years since it was announced. Is that still the case? Can we resolve what's going on with his idea? To which Kennedy answered, after final editing and approvals that is, Rian has been unbelievably busy with Knives Out and the deal that he made at Netflix for multiple movies. I've had meetings with Rian. He's somebody that's come in as part of our little brain trust discussions along the way. He remains very committed to what it is we're trying to do. He just literally hasn't had the time to devote. That's what I'm saying. Anyone who comes into the Star Wars universe need to know that it's a 3, 4, 5-year commitment. That's what it takes. You can't step in for a year and shoot something and then walk away. It just doesn't work that way, so it requires that kind of nurturing. That, then, is the official party line. Rian Johnson has these pesky Netflix commitments, and because of them, he's legally prevented from devoting the years and years of his full and undivided attention that Star Wars requires. Maybe that will change in the future, but for now, don't think about it. Don't wonder why Netflix would have a higher claim on Rian to make sequels to a movie from 2019 for them than Lucasfilm would have on him to make a trilogy announced 2 years earlier. Don't ask any questions, you have been provided the party line, so just accept it. That is the message, the spin, and the acceptable truth that Lucasfilm is using Vanity Fair as a means to communicate to the rest of the entertainment media complex, who will further disseminate it to audiences. But instead of accepting that acceptable truth, let's look at what actually happened. According to Bob Iger's memoirs/management handbook, Iger, director J.J. Abrams, and then newly installed Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy together cooked up a loose outline for the sequel trilogy. It selectively used bits and pieces from George Lucas' original sequel trilogy outline, but went in a different direction. It wasn't a very detailed outline for the trilogy as a whole, but detailed enough that between it and what J.J. Abrams established in the first installment, The Force Awakens, it, if nothing else, had the potential to end up a trilogy in every sense of the word. But as everyone who has seen the 3 movies that the sequel trilogy ultimately would comprise of know, it's only a trilogy in the sense that they officially share the same continuity. Spiritually, tonally, and story-wise, they are 3 completely different movies. Here, the official record is somewhat sparse, but if we add in the rumors that emanated from the productions at the time, we get a fairly good idea of what happened. For the second installment, Kathleen Kennedy hired Rian Johnson, a fellow ideologue just like her, and maybe for that reason, she gave him a carte blanche to do what he wanted. And in retrospect, that may have been the one key decision that in time would lead to the destruction of both the Star Wars brand as well as Kathleen Kennedy's legacy. You see, what Rian Johnson wanted to do began with scrapping the outline for the sequel trilogy, and to this end, close off every single story thread set up in The Force Awakens, and doing so in ways which subverted expectations. Upon release in December of 2017, The Last Jedi was hailed by establishment critics as a masterpiece, right up there with, and perhaps even above, The Empire Strikes Back. And against this backdrop of critical praise, Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy was gleefully announced. Too bad not all that praise was genuine.
Everybody in our industry occasionally has to play softball, occasionally has to, look the other way a little bit. Everybody has to do it.
Wait, returning what? Like a movie that's
in the sense that,
or?
I hated a movie, but I won't say that I hated the movie. Or an actor behaved a sort of way, and you don't want to, put it out there that happened.
Right, because you might not get the next review,
right.
next gig.
So to some degree, everybody in our industry that is a part of this quote-unquote access media has to sort of decide which battles they want to pick.
One critic revealed how such lavish praise sometimes work.
You look at Last Jedi, I honestly don't know anybody out here, maybe 2 people in my life, and hundreds of people I've talked to that like the movie. All the filmmakers I know that won't talk about it publicly. All the people I know internally, there's all these people that won't, even journalists that gave it positive reviews are like, I do that because I need to maintain my access. Like, privately, there's a lot of people that really don't like that film.
The thing about it too, though.
So you're saying the ones who gave it good reviews really are phony reviews?
But the other thing too is just the fact that
100%,
it should be.
I can't name them, but yes.
No,
100%.
well, of course, yes.
So, all that praise from professional critics might not have been entirely genuine. What was entirely genuine, though, was the gradually growing and ever faster escalating fan and general audience backlash. After a strong start, The Last Jedi box office nosedived. And it wasn't just the box office, it was everything Star Wars. The Last Jedi marks the spot where all the arrows started pointing downwards for the franchise at large. In the same Vanity Fair piece, Kathleen Kennedy tacitly blamed the Solo: A Star Wars Story underperformance on star Alden Ehrenreich and the audience for refusing to accept a recast Han Solo. But what really killed that movie was first that it wasn't very good, but also that it was released in the early summer of 2018, when anger over The Last Jedi was ever escalating and still growing. It was in the aftermath of Solo's failure that then Disney CEO Bob Iger personally had to step in, and in the fall of 2018, by way of The Hollywood Reporter, he made it clear that where Star Wars was concerned, the buck stopped with him, and therefore no longer with Kathleen Kennedy, whom as president of Lucasfilm, the buck by rights should have stopped with. It was somewhere around this time, in the second half of 2018, that Bob Iger by all accounts stepped in and killed the Rian Johnson trilogy. This was a big blow to both Kathleen Kennedy and to Rian Johnson, though this is what freed him to go and take on all those other commitments he since took on, which is what he is so busy with right now. But if the Rian Johnson trilogy really has been dead in the water for the better part of 4 years already, why are they still pretending there is a chance it can happen at some unspecified point in the future, if and when Rian Johnson's schedule eventually clears up? To understand that, we have to consider what The Last Jedi really was. Instead of listing all the ways in which The Last Jedi subverted expectations, just imagine if Rian Johnson instead had directed The Karate Kid.
Would you teach me karate?
I don't believe in karate anymore. Leave me alone, Daniel-san. I want to die.
That is pretty much what Rian Johnson did to Star Wars. Why would he do such a thing? Well, he actually told us in the movie. Celebrating tradition, what you grew up with and the role models of the past is problematic. Instead,
let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
And that's what The Last Jedi did. It ended the story right there, so an all-new, all-different Star Wars could take its place from that point onwards. Kathleen Kennedy loved it, as did all of her Lucasfilm hires. Not only is this in line with their ideology and worldview, according to some rumors, so take with the usual grain of salt, this would facilitate ending George Lucas Star Wars and replacing it with Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars going forward. Kathleen Kennedy's all-new, all-different Star Wars was supposed to cement her legacy, and Rian Johnson's trilogy was supposed to be the centerpiece of it. Supporting these rumors, there are widely published reports that Kennedy mandated Galaxy's Edge to be made in the image of her sequel trilogy rather than the image of George Lucas' original trilogy, which was the initial plan. Because, and I quote, "There were more Star Wars stories ahead of us than behind us." That may technically be true in terms of how much Star Wars screen time existed before that statement was made compared with after, but not in any other way. It would appear that in their hurry to end the Star Wars of old, they either hadn't contemplated what this all-new, all-different Star Wars was going to look like, or more likely, they had, but Iger blocked it. Either way, The Last Jedi serves as both the beginning and the end for Kennedy's all-new, all-different Star Wars. And that was a big blow to all involved. Since The Last Jedi, for all intents and purposes, had ended the story of the sequel trilogy already in the second installment, J.J. Abrams, who was persuaded to return for the third, had to start over and both set up and close off another story and another villain. It did not go well. In the end, The Last Jedi subversion made the sequel trilogy as a whole a disjointed mess and a creative dead end, which led nowhere and set up nothing going forward. Hence, the only way forward for the franchise was going back to the George Lucas era, the very era that The Last Jedi so explicitly wanted to bury. The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and now Obi-Wan Kenobi are all testaments to the failure of The Last Jedi. But to the Kennedy faction of Lucasfilm, The Last Jedi still represents something more than that. When new Disney CEO Bob Chapek made it clear that his intention was to make Disney politically neutral again, he faced a rebellion from the many activists within the company. when walkouts subsequently were organized over Disney's initial reluctance at interfering in state politics to have the Florida bill overturned. The Kennedy faction of Lucasfilm proudly and gleefully declared on Twitter, "Lucasfilm walkout. Time to watch The Last Jedi again, because this is a movement of leaders. Anyone can be powerful. No one owns the labor force besides ourselves." While that message really doesn't have anything to do with the Florida bill which spurred the walkouts in the first place, that is what The Last Jedi is to many within Lucasfilm, a political symbol. And not just any random political symbol, but one that encompasses the worldview of a great many people working there. The Vanity Fair piece was commissioned by just these people at Lucasfilm, who cannot admit that The Last Jedi ruined the franchise and that the Rian Johnson trilogy will never happen. The cognitive dissonance would be too painful, hence the acceptable truth. Rian Johnson is too busy. Maybe later, many years from now, when he's done making movies for Netflix. In actual reality, of course, he's busy making movies for Netflix because his Star Wars trilogy will never happen. Or do you think it somehow still might? Let me know in the comments, and before you go, remember that Established Titles is running a big sale right now, and if you use our code MIDNIGHT10, you get an additional 10% off. Go to https://establishedtitles.com/midnight10 to get your gifts now. Link is in the description.